Teachers who ended up working at schools that you attended as a student. What behind-the-scenes secrets, dirt, or teachers' lounge gossip did you learn that you were clueless of as a student?
The biggest surprise for me was that the teacher I adored as a kid is actually a douche. I loved him as a teacher when I was 14 years old, but I can't stand him as a colleague.
This happened in a weird way to me while still in high school. Teacher taught freshmen and seniors. Thought she was amazing as a freshman, seemed laid back and funny. Realized how disorganized and unhelpful she was as a senior. It was awful.
Sounds like managers. If everything is going well and people are doing their job, the laid-back manager who doesn't do much is great. When people start slacking off and stuff is falling apart though, you want the jerk manager to put his foot down.
I had a manager once who told new hires, "If you're here to slack off, you'll hate me. Do your job and we'll get along fine." She was one of my favorite managers.
All the staff hated the deputy principal as much as the students did, if not more. I remember my teacher mom telling my dad one day how her principal has turned into such an A1 bitch.
What exactly delegates one to A1 status?
She puts sauce on her steak. Peppercorn sauce on steak is the best thing ever. My third grade teacher was killed when her car got stuck on the train tracks. Her husband was the principal. After I found out through parents that everyone was starting to suspect that the principal was seeing one of the teacher's aides. It was one of those uncomfortable things where a lot of the moms were after him because he was single, and so they were incredibly jealous and petty towards this particular aide. Years later, I found out the principal and this aide got married. Years after that, when they were both gone, I started working with my old elementary school. And that's when I found out the truth. That the aide and principal had started having an affair back when my third grade teacher was still alive. She found out about their affair, and her death was not an accident. She was actually on the phone with the aide when she purposely drove her car onto the train tracks and killed herself.
Damn. I can't believe the aide was able or would want to continue the affair after that.
At that point you're like, already committed. I interned at my old elementary school and subbed at the high school. Honestly wasn't as wild and debaucherous as some folks wish it to be. Biggest revelations. My old music teacher would fall asleep during after-school meetings and professional development with regularity. Sweet fourth grade teacher actually took no crap during after-school meetings if someone was trying to push policy or curriculum that made no sense. High school teachers would gossip in teachers' lounge about students, though generally only occasionally in passing. And not always scandalous gossip. Just generally more aware of each student's social life than I'd have ever imagined they'd be. An example would be something like, "How's Steve been today? Turned in his homework, but it was incomplete. Didn't really participate today. Heard he and Kristen weren't really talking anymore. Yeah, seems to be going through a rough time now, but I think he's going to be better off in the long run." In hindsight, it was weird to consider that these folks were likely talking about me and my personal life in various regards a few years prior. Always assumed my life in school was relatively insular, but teachers see a lot more than we think. I found out the school I work at has a decommissioned shooting range in the basement.
Someone up above said the same, maybe y'all know each other.
Shooting used to actually be taught in US schools. It's probably more widespread than most of us think. Even here in Canada, my high school, built in the late 60s, had an old gun range. We recently discovered that my girlfriend's teacher, who would occasionally break down crying during class when the kids were being particularly childlike, was dealing with cancer during that time. We had a teacher get pregnant mid-year, and hormones took over, and she was prone to crying all the time as well. Same with a teacher of mine. Went to sudden full Spartan rage mode and then started crying. I had a teacher do that, but it was because she was alcoholic and drinking all day long.
I didn't end up working at my old school, but I did run into my old guidance counselor, who had since moved districts, at a conference. I was mentioning the teachers I had had, and that the photography teacher always creeped me out. He confirmed that said teacher had been quietly fired for sleeping with students. And this was at a school where my AP history teacher was actually married to a former student. Nothing to see here.
Marriages and divorces, depressions, cancers, all of that shit about the teachers that you sometimes suspected but never really knew for sure. Also, teachers can be ruthless when talking about kids, but it's funny as hell. Drinking wine with some of my former teachers was fucking weird, but 100% would recommend. I went to a drag show with my former elementary teacher and got drunk. It was nuts but great. LMAO, damn, you got me beat. I sometimes text my former art teacher colleague, and we get beers and talk about our lives, and that's about as wild as it gets. She's old enough to be my mom though, but is really fun to be around. That's cool. Wish I could find my old art teacher and have a beer with her.
My mom did her student teaching at the Catholic high school she attended. She didn't know that, while she'd been away at university, one of her favorite teaching nuns had left the order and gotten married. She almost had a heart attack when she recognized Sister Mary Irony in the halls one day and realized she had a solid 7-month pregnant belly.
Sister Mary Irony.
Not a teacher, but I was an IT technician at my high school about 6 years after I graduated. The staff at the school all share stories about students among each other, so they all knew who was good or bad, they knew who was dating who, they knew all the friend groups, they knew about students' social lives. This isn't stuff they'd ever be told directly, just observations. I swear, they knew more about the class than I ever would have as a student as part of the class. Also, as someone else said, it's actually kind of fun to have a beer or drink with your old teachers. Sometimes the ones you become friends with aren't the ones you ever would have thought would be the case when you were in school. I was dating this guy once in secondary school. We weren't out as gay yet, so the relationship was secret. I visited one of my pastoral teachers who loves to talk a lot, and then at some point she asked if I was still with this guy. I was shocked because none of my friends or his friends knew we were dating, and we didn't even spend that much time together in school. I asked her how she knew that we had dated. We broke up a few weeks prior, and she said in the study area, which she supervises 95% of the time, couples always seem to glance at each other in this certain way every time she was telling someone about her past relationships. She not only correctly guessed us, but also listed 10 other secretive couples and even correctly guessed who this girl was cheating on this guy with. One pairing she got wrong then is they weren't dating, but fast forward 5 years, and now they are engaged.
Dang. Your teacher was hella observant. In high school, I really liked this one guy, but I only spoke to him every once in a while. We had a class together and 2 of my really good friends were in there too. They would always mess around with him and flirt with him. Then one day, all 3 of us were talking to my teacher, and he said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, you like the new kid, right?" And my friends were like, "Lol, nah, we just play around with him, but we don't like him like that." He shook his head, pointed at me, and said, "No, I was saying you like him." I was shaken to the core that he was able to pick that up because I didn't really talk to the guy much. I was also tight with that teacher, so it wasn't weird that he pointed his observation out. Turned out that he and my history teacher knew they were good friends, and that's why we got seated closer to each other on the seating chart, and they paired us together for group work. Those teachers were being my wingmen and I didn't even know it. Lmao.
Not a teacher, but when I was in high school, a female student's nude had been discovered on a flash drive that a male teacher gave to students if they didn't have a flash drive, so they could work on projects at home if necessary. Obviously, an investigation went underway, and it was found that another student had put the nude on the flash drive, but amidst all the chaos and rampant rumors, it was discovered that the male teacher was having an affair with one of the social studies female teachers, who was also married. Male teacher is still currently with his wife, while the female SS teacher divorced her husband, thinking that male teacher was leaving his wife for her. Fricking spicy as a 17-year-old LOL. Fricking spicy even as an old fart, to be honest. That they have a secret basement.
My school did, and there was a rumor that there was a tunnel as well that connected the high school to the one across the road. 2 guys from our drumline found the secret basement and ended up getting suspended because of it. Was supposed to be a secret, but the entire band knew why.
Our high school had that too, but we were split into 2 campuses, so the rumor was that they connected the campuses. Turns out it was a shooting range over 30 years ago. Now it's just a basement area underneath the pool. It's pretty neat. I was on swim team, so we got to check it out. It had a one-sided glass window, so you can watch people doing turns at the walls to watch the flipping technique. We had a shooting range in our school. It was on the bottom floor right across from my homeroom, but having a basement under the pool sounds pretty cool.
A lot students we'd pass just because we don't want to deal with them anymore, or because their failure would hurt funding, and we were pressured to overlook failure of certain students.
I taught at a technical school for 1 semester. I was forced to quit when I refused to pass an obviously failing student. The school's director brought me into his office and specifically said that if the student didn't pass, they would lose his tuition and I would be fired if I didn't pass him. I walked out in disgust.
Yeah. That sounds about right. Funding is more important than education, and there is definitely a lot of inner politics behind grading and scoring of students. It's appalling how they treat kids as nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet.
Like, comment, and share. Reddit Story Topper. Subscribe now.